Good evening. My name is Julie Nyquist, and I'm thrilled that we're able to be here this evening to hear Julie, Clum, and Janet Burgess tell us their stories of legacy through service. The Grammar School has been blessed to have their life's work as its focus. These two dynamic women exemplify serving as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. Janet and Julie have supported their husbands, Steve and Roger's work here at WCGS for their entire careers. We celebrated Mr. Clum's retirement at the beginning of the school year, and we'll close the school year celebrating Mr. Burgess's retirement. There is one point that I'd like to make before I invite them up to share their stories. Julie and Janet, this evening is not about your retirement. We sincerely hope to continue seeing you serve in various ways here at WCGS in the years to come. Thank you for your work here for over 4 decades. Please welcome Julie Clum and Janet Burgess.
Yes, it's my husband running the slides, so you can think about that one. Julie and I would like to thank the auxiliary for inviting us to share some of our experiences at Wheaton Christian Grammar School. It has been much fun and a real joy to reminisce about our connections to WCGS. Have you ever thought about what was happening in our world 80 years ago when Wheaton Christian Grammar School started? The bombing of Pearl Harbor had just happened, and 2 days later, a group of godly parents followed God's leading and were committed to doing what was needed to start a Christian school. The school started on September 8, 1942, and after dealing with some Wheaton zoning laws, WCGS moved into a house at 531 Kenilworth Avenue, near the present tennis courts at Wheaton College. There were 15 students and 1 teacher, and the student desks were orange crates. In March 1945, Dr. Paul Wright, Dave Wright's grandfather, presented to the board the idea of a new building due to expanded enrollment and outgrowing the 531 Kenilworth House, as well as the 535 Kenilworth House, which had been purchased in 1946. On September 17, 1951, WCGS moved into the brand new building at 530 East Harrison with 147 students. Written on the cornerstone is Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, a biblical truth on which the school has been built. There were 4 additions throughout the years, and before we left, there were even 6 mobile classrooms, until finally we were totally out of space. God led the school to purchase the Taylor Drive property, and the school moved into this new building 12 years ago. The cornerstone from the old building was transferred to the lobby of the new building, which many of you have probably seen. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow.
Jan and I had the privilege and pleasure of working with several former WCGS teachers who invested their careers at the grammar school. For 34 years, Mary Ross served in 2 capacities, first as the principal and then as a reading support teacher. Her work in developing curriculum that was then used by other Christian schools is especially noteworthy. Marge Stockwell taught language arts in our junior high for 37 years. B. Killip taught in our kindergarten for 38 years. Dottie Hyatt taught 2nd and 3rd grades for 39 years. And Marilyn Himmel taught 5th grade for 41 years. Roger, Jan, and I all started at WCGS in 5th grade with Miss Himmel. Marilyn Himmel is with us this evening. Marilyn, would you please stand and join me in recognizing her for her decades of service to the grammar school. The longevity of these ladies' tenure gave the school a strong, stable foundation on which to build. And this strength set our school apart from other Christian schools. These women were colleagues who became our dear friends as we worked together nurturing children for godliness and excellence. We learned a lot from watching these seasoned teachers. David Roth has coined the phrase living curriculum teachers, and that's what they were. As young teachers, these are some lessons that we learned from them. They worked hard for the glory of God. In the 530 East Harrison building, we had 1 Corinthians 10:31 written on the gym wall. Whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. And that was so appropriate, as our gym was not only used for PE classes and games, but for chapels and assemblies and the science fair and vocal and instrumental concerts and the musical. These women sacrificed of their time and their finances for the sake of the children and ultimately for God whom they loved and served. They were committed to the Lord, to their work, to the children and families of WCGS. Their tenure speaks to the commitment they had to Christian education. They were team players, and they embraced us as we were launching into the profession of education. They were for us, and they wanted to see us become successful educators as well. They valued relationships with colleagues, with students, with families. They knew the importance of the eternity factor. Relationships are the one thing that we are taking with us to heaven. They lived to please God and not people. God's work in their lives was very evident. They shared and led us in that discovery. We met for devotions 4 times a week and prayed together for the needs of our families and the needs of the school. They trusted God for his provision. They worked at WCGS for a small wage. We saw as God provided for them in housing, in the purchase of a car, in an annual vacation, and in life in general. They were content because they knew that God, who brought them to this place to work, would be with them, go before them, and provide for them along the way. There have been other teachers who have come to WCGS and have served for a length of time. Lois Landrum came as a reading support teacher and then taught second grade for a total of 30 years. Likewise, Donna Dominguez came as a kindergarten aide and then taught first grade for 30 years. Additionally, Marty Knutson taught 4th grade and then first grade for 29 years. Her legacy continues as her daughter, Mary Beth Sauter, teaches in our present-day 5th grade. For 29 years, Anita Bingham taught 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th grades, and her legacy continues through her daughter, Kathy Mitchell, who teaches in our 2nd grade. The rich legacy of tenure continues to this day. Dave Wright has been leading our vocal and instrumental program for 36 years, and Joanne King has served as a reading support teacher for 34 years.
My walk with WCGS began my junior year at Wheaton College. Dean Federhoff, business manager of the school at that time, spoke at a chapel for education majors. Up until that time, I was not aware that the grammar school was located across the driveway from Wheaton College's Fisher Dorm. Mr. Federhoff challenged us to consider teaching in a Christian school where we could educate the whole child and help prepare the next generation to be Christ's witnesses in the world where God placed them. After much prayer and discussions with my parents, who were both public school educators, and with godly friends, I decided to apply to student teach at WCGS. My application was accepted, and I was placed in 6th grade with Miss Bingham in the fall of 1972. I learned many things from her as to how to teach curriculum through the lens of God's Word. I also learned to care for my students on a personal level, knowing who had a dog, what their passions were outside of the school day, how many siblings they had, and most importantly, what each student's relationship was with Jesus. As I worked on projects in my college years where we were to choose a grade level and create lessons surrounding that level, I always designed my projects around 5th grade. In the spring of 1973, I was invited to interview at Wheaton Christian Grammar School for a teacher opening in 5th grade. As I sought the Lord's direction as to whether or not I should teach at a Christian school, specifically WCGS, and wondered if I could financially manage living in Wheaton on a Christian school salary, I heard a sermon on Psalm 2. Verse 11 says, "Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling." Then the last part of verse 12 says, "Blessed are all who take refuge in him." I went to the interview, I was offered the 5th grade position, and I accepted the offer. God was definitely leading me to serve him at WCGS and promised to take care of all my needs. I was very excited to teach 5th grade, the same grade level that my mom taught for many years. I felt like I was able to relate well to 5th graders, and I looked forward to helping them grow academically and spiritually. Although I student taught on the 6th grade level, I felt like the things I learned could easily be applied in 5th grade as well. As I began my teaching career, I also realized the great responsibility it was to understand that Wheaton Christian Grammar School was an extension of the Christian home and church, and my teaching needed to reflect those relationships.
I first came to the grammar school as a mere 20-year-old. I was a junior elementary education major at Wheaton College. If any of you heard Steve speak at his retirement celebration, you will know that he had fully intended to return to his home state of Michigan to pursue a teaching job. But I'm afraid I was the one that kept him in the Wheaton community. When David Roth hired him back in August of 1974, he asked Steve for a 2-year commitment. That time frame was perfect, as it allowed me to finish college, and in August of 1976, we were married. I had not landed a teaching job right away after graduation. However, there was a 2nd grade teacher who had fallen and broken her ankle and wrist. Because she was limited in her mobility, I was hired to be a 2nd grade aide. Keep in mind, this was way before we had aides at our school. At the time, I also took on the responsibility of a recess supervisor. After Ms. Holman, the 2nd grade teacher, fully recovered from her injury, I was released from my aide position. However, I was still asked to keep on in supervising recess. Not long after that, I applied for a 5th grade teaching position that was going to open mid-year due to the pregnancy of one of the teachers. Now, the 1976-77 school year was not a typical year. The last addition on the Harrison Avenue building was underway, so there were double classrooms in grades 3 through 6. I taught with Marilyn Himmel in what became Dave Wright's music room. We had no windows, 50 student desks plus 2 teachers' desks sandwiched into that space. I am not sure if that passed the fire code, but it is what it was, and that was my introduction to teaching. It was a most unique first year. I did have an 11-year-old boy in that class by the name of Steve Vanderclock. Yes, I am old enough to have taught Ann's husband when he was in 5th grade. The blessing of the next school year was that I got a brand new classroom, and what a joy that was. And Jan was in the classroom right next to me. I taught 5th grade for the next 4 years and also coached the cheerleaders along with our girls' PE teacher. One summer, we even took the girls to cheerleading camp at Grace College in Indiana. A highlight of the year was planning for the all-school pep rally and the intergrade competition that would determine who would win the dearly beloved Spirit Stick.
As excited as I was to be teaching on the 5th grade level, I had no idea how God was preparing me to do something different. First of all, during my first year, our music teacher was working on a counseling degree, and she needed to take a required concentrated course for 6 weeks. The WCGS administration tried very hard to hire another music teacher for that time. I became aware of the difficulty of accomplishing this, and I volunteered to teach the music classes if it was easier to get me a 5th grade sub. That is exactly what happened. I taught my 5th graders in the morning, and I taught music classes in the afternoon. God stretched me as a teacher and gave me the ability not only to teach my own students, but also provide lesson plans for my sub and plan and teach music classes. During the spring of my first year, Roger Burgess arrived at WCGS to student teach, also under Miss Bingham in the 6th grade. Now, we were both at Wheaton College for 3 years, but I don't remember ever seeing him or talking to him until he student taught at WCGS. At the end of the year, there was a teacher opening for the following fall. It was in 4th grade. The principal asked to meet with me and wanted me to consider going down to the 4th grade level so they could have a man in the 5th grade. I prayed very sincerely that God would give me just the right way to say no. I wasn't ready to have another first year, which is always very challenging. And besides that, remember, I always wanted to teach 5th grade. I went to the meeting, and something happened that had never happened before. I heard myself tell the principal I would be glad to step down to 4th grade. Truly, God put into my mouth and heart the desire to help the school in whatever way I could. By the way, Roger and I taught together for 5 years before we finally got married. My original plan was to teach 5th grade for many years rather than changing grades after only my first year of teaching. Throughout my 24 years at WCGS, I learned to really enjoy teaching 4th grade and spent most of my time doing that, in addition to teaching several years of 6th grade as the need was presented. I also had many wonderful opportunities to play my guitar and piano during worship and praise time with my students during Bible class, and I was asked to play the piano at a variety of concerts at WCGS. In all of this, I learned firsthand the truths of Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Another very important experience I had was to be used by God to lead several students to a saving knowledge of Jesus. I knew that teaching at a Christian school meant that I would have the opportunity to teach Bible every day to my students, but I didn't realize the tremendous privilege and joy I would also have to be the channel through which the Holy Spirit touched lives for eternity with Him.
My role at Wheaton Christian Grammar School changed as Steve and I became parents of 2 daughters, Jennifer and Katie. For the most part, I was home with the girls doing a little bit of tutoring on the side. But on a more personal level, my mom had passed away after a 2-year battle with leukemia at the end of my oldest daughter's kindergarten year. I was a young mom of 32 years old, and I had 6 and 3-year-old daughters. I had experienced a significant loss in my life, and I was on a journey in processing my grief. As I look back on that time now, I would not have made it through without wonderfully supportive friends, many of whom were WCGS moms, an incredibly patient husband, and most of all, a faithful God. I began volunteering more at WCGS. It was a blessing to be involved at the school, and it met a need in my own heart. I served on the first ever WCGS Summer Reading Program Committee. We called it the Read-diculous Readathon. Cindy Clousing, Shirley Matthews, Mary Kay Brook, Donna McAllister, Judy Fischera, Judy Marshall, and Linda Sale also served with me. They are now all WCGS grandparents. One year, the Olympics was our readathon theme. And as part of our celebration party, we invited the Jessie White Tumblers from Chicago. They entertained us with some pretty spectacular tricks. I also served as a Book It mom. I smile as I see the first grade Very Hungry Caterpillars displayed in the hallway each spring. That was a project that we introduced to the first graders in Donna Dominguez's class over 30 years ago. In the late 80s, I returned to coaching cheerleaders, this time with Beth Wright. We did that together until the mid-90s when the girls' sports program started ramping up and the cheerleading program was dropped. Jan and I both served on the WCGS 50th Anniversary Committee, planning activities for students, helping to organize the 50th Anniversary banquet, and last but not least, planning for our participation in the Wheaton 4th of July Parade. Probably one of my favorite volunteer experiences was serving as an overnight mom and a kitchen helper for the 5th grade outdoor education experience at the Morton Arboretum. That was back in the day when the overnight program still existed. You may very well recognize a boy in the middle of this picture with a white hat and a big smile. It was a joy to see the kids loving God's creation, loving the great Creator, exploring and learning together under the able direction of Marilyn Himmel. My committee work continued as I served as a room mom for several years, served on the junior high banquet committee, now called the Gala, and served on the 8th grade graduation committee. As my children were in school full-time, I began to substitute teach at the grammar school. I found that it was a really good complement to Steve's work as he started in administration. He got to meet everyone as they interviewed to come to the grammar school, and I got to know the kids better through my work in the classroom. I've now subbed for over 30 years at every grade level and in every special, some of which are a real stretch for me. Ooh. I think I've gone on nearly every field trip there is across the grades, even going on 5th grade outdoor education, which is now to Camp Timberley. I've subbed on the first day of school and the last day of school, and everything in between. I've subbed for a few maternity leaves and other long-term assignments. I absolutely love supporting teachers. I love getting to know the kids, and it's a real joy to watch them grow and mature over the years, which is something unique that I get to witness firsthand. About 17 years ago, I was asked to teach Bible alongside Mr. Cherry in the 8th grade relationship unit. He taught the boys, and I had the girls. I just finished teaching that unit last month. It is a sheer joy for me to teach the girls about relationships with one another, and yes, with boys, and with God. I always tell the parents that my heart is blessed each year I get to teach this, as I get to see and hear young girls' hearts that are aligned with godly principles and standards. And in essence, that is a tribute to you parents and what you are teaching in your homes. The best job that I've had at WCGS, though, has been simply to be Steve's wife. We are partners in life, and we've been partners in ministry. Several years ago, he was asked to speak at Moody Bible Institute Chapel for education majors. His topic, the call to Christian education. That was an exceedingly thought-provoking title, as it caused us to reflect on our work at WCGS over the decades. During the 80s, as Steve pursued his master's degree in educational leadership, he did so with the intent that he would one day like to be a high school athletic director and a basketball coach. However, we saw God direct and redirect our lives many times, as we both had local and out-of-state opportunities to leave WCGS in the late 70s and early 80s, as Steve was approached by the board to apply for the principal's position in 1987, that in and of itself was never on our radar. In the middle of the 90s, we pursued a job that we thought would be a good fit given Steve's skill set, but that didn't materialize. And then again in 2006, as Steve assumed the newly created head of school position, once again encouraged by the board to do so. Proverbs 16:19, the heart of the man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. As we have journeyed through decades of ministry at WCGS, that is exactly what we have experienced. God did not reveal that plan years or decades in advance. Rather, it was a step-by-step walk with him, as God opened doors and closed some, directing and redirecting our lives. Just this fall, I was subbing in Mr. Johnson's 6th grade class, leading students in a review for a Bible test over the patriarchs. As I was reviewing the vocabulary, we came to the word providence. Providence, God's perfect will, plan, and purpose for our lives. And as I led those 6th graders, I thought to myself, God's providence, his perfect plan was for us to work and serve at WCGS for 47 years, and that was revealed step by step as we followed him.
One of the things that helps Wheaton Christian Grammar School run so smoothly is understanding the concept of community that includes the families, the faculty, and staff. As a classroom teacher, I very much appreciated the many parent volunteers who helped me through the years. I received help with listening to Bible memory, driving and helping supervise field trips, class parties, and monthly ministries. For several years, once a month, my class visited a bilingual class at Courier School in West Chicago. It took many parents to help us make that trip each month and to help us with special projects with our buddies. Parents also helped with special celebrations and lunch supervision. In my 24 years of teaching at WCGS, the students always ate in the classroom because there was no lunchroom. Parents helped move my things from one classroom to another as I taught in a variety of classrooms, both on the main floor and the second floor, as well as in a mobile classroom for 2 years. Parents helped with my students as we went ice skating at the Carroll Stream Indoor Rink after our novel study of Hans Brinker or the Silver Skates. Parents helped when we went to the Olive Garden for lunch after our unit on consumer education. Parents helped with a Christmas play one year. One of the boys had a new baby brother. Their mom, Marilyn Peterson, who later joined the faculty, was willing to allow this little one to represent baby Jesus. And she allowed the fourth grade girl playing the part of Mary to hold the baby in the scene after Jesus was born. One year, one of the moms heard me say that I really enjoyed drinking Diet Dr. Pepper caffeine-free. Now, it was easy to find the Diet Dr. Pepper, but very difficult to find it with no caffeine. I don't know where this mom found it, but for my birthday, she wrapped a can for each student to give to me. And one at a time, the students brought me one wrapped gift and said something kind about me. It was great to have that much Dr. Pepper to drink. But the encouraging words the students shared were even more special. When I first started teaching a unit on the Reformation, I commented to one of the moms that I wished I had a door like the one at the Wittenberg Castle Church in Germany, where Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses. She told me that when they moved into their house, there was this extra door leaning against a wall inside their garage, and they never figured out where it was supposed to go. She said she was willing to do some things to it to make it look similar to the church door. She repainted it and added an old-looking doorknob. This certainly enhanced my Reformation unit and gave the students the opportunity to nail to the door 3x5 cards with scripture passages that Luther used to support the fact that true righteousness comes through faith in Christ alone. In my last year of teaching, the day before Christmas vacation was canceled due to a snowstorm. We didn't get to have our last day of lighting the Advent wreath, including the Christ candle, and I didn't get to give the children my special gifts I had for them. But with the help of my students' wonderful moms, instead of a Christmas celebration, we celebrated All Kings Day on January 6th. We learned about the wise men who followed the star to the house where Jesus was, worshiped him, and gave him gifts. A tradition of this celebration includes special white cake, so the moms made vanilla cupcakes with much instruction and warnings for the students to be very careful. And with the help of moms who were there that day, there was a candle in each cupcake that was lit before we sang Happy Birthday to Jesus. That probably wasn't the fire code either. This was extra meaningful because our Christmas gift offering that year was to the Kids Alive children in the Dominican Republic. Traditionally, those children do not open gifts as represented by the wise men's gifts to Jesus until they celebrate All Kings Day. Through the help of the moms, our disappointment of missing our Christmas celebration turned into the joy of learning more about the wise men and celebrating All Kings Day. The more I taught, the more I realized I couldn't do everything by myself, and I needed to be open to the wonderful help that many parents offered in order to enhance their child's education. As I look back on my years at WCGS, there are 4 major lessons I have learned. God's ways are not always our ways. God never calls you to do something without also equipping you to do it. It is when God puts us in a situation that we think is impossible for us to accomplish, we see God's power in our lives. God uses ordinary people to accomplish his purposes.
The auxiliary has always been a strong backbone of the ministry of Wheaton Christian Grammar School. Whether it is through fundraising, serving, planning social events, or meeting spiritual needs, the auxiliary is there to serve and support. They continue to find new and creative ways in which to benefit the students, the faculty, and the administration. In the 70s and 80s, the auxiliary was well known in the Wheaton community for country stores. The women would work throughout the year on craft projects and sell them at this one-day sale in November. There was a walkthrough the night before, which allowed people to see what special item or items they might like to buy. We actually had school dads that stayed as guards overnight. The night of the walkthrough before the sale started the next morning. The traffic this brought to the school was tremendous. We both remember seeing lines form outside our classrooms, sometimes women even bringing their lawn chairs and a thermos of coffee as they waited for the doors to open. This was long before the days of Starbucks. The auxiliary made around $10,000 on this event, and then, of course, looked for ways in which to bless the school. Our present-day Christmas sale for students actually morphed from country stores, as there were tables that were set up specifically for students who desired to make purchases. Like the auxiliary continues to do to this day in serving hot lunch to our students, we remember the day when hot lunch was served once a month. It was either hot dogs or sloppy joes. On Sloppy Joe lunch days, the moms would come early in the morning and start making the barbecue in the kitchen. Some of you will remember the location of the kitchen in the old school, fairly central to everything, and the smell of barbecue wafted throughout the building, and by 10 a.m. we were already hungry for lunch. As I was going through the WCGS cookbook, which was also a project of the auxiliary, I came across the recipe used for this: 75 pounds of ground beef. For decades, the auxiliary has overseen our Popcorn Fridays. The volunteers work behind the scenes providing a well-loved snack for the students. The auxiliary also has a long history of helping teachers with copying, collating, and laminating. The auxiliary not only blessed the students and their teachers, but would meet with the administration to get some ideas of larger projects they could be involved in. One such project was the replacement of the old playground equipment in front of the school on 530 East Harrison. The metal swings, slides, and monkey bars were replaced with a colorful, durable material similar to what we have here on Taylor Drive. And as a side note, when Wheaton College purchased our property on Harrison, we were able to donate the newer playground equipment to kids around the world who built a playground for the Kashivo Indians in Peru. Another project that the auxiliary took on was the creation of the Book Nook that was located in the upper floor of a house that was connected to our school on Harrison. The Book Nook became the room where kindergarten through second graders had their library time and could come and cozy up with a book and read. The auxiliary created a student-friendly environment complete with carpeting, pillows, and wall art. The auxiliary continues the rich tradition of involvement in the spiritual needs of the school through prayer and Bible study. I remember a time about 13 years ago when we received a call from an auxiliary officer telling us of a school family whose preschooler was in the hospital at Lutheran General in Park Ridge. This family had just received a diagnosis for their child, nephrotic syndrome, which was the same diagnosis that we had received for our daughter Katie when she was in kindergarten. We wasted no time and took off for the hospital. We actually asked Katie if she'd go with us, as we felt her presence would be an encouragement to the family. Everything was so very familiar. The trek up 294 North, the same hospital, the same pediatric floor, the same pediatric nephrologist. You know, God never wastes our experience in life, does he? He uses them so that we can encourage others. We began our friendship with that family that continues to this day, even though they now live out of state. Our children both experienced similar consequences of this kidney disorder. They were both steroid dependent. They both had kidney biopsies. They both underwent chemotherapy. They both had subsequent relapses. But God sustained us during Katie's health challenges, and He sustained her, just as He sustained this family and their son. Our connection with this family was made because a member of the auxiliary was the connector, and our lives have been tremendously blessed because of our ongoing friendship with this family. The auxiliary is fantastic at hearing of needs and moving into action. Sometimes it may just involve a phone call. Sometimes meals are provided. Childcare may perhaps be a need, and always, everything is a matter of prayer. I am so thankful for the auxiliary's ministry to the WCGS family over our decades of work here. As Lucy has already thanked those of you who have served this year, we too would like to extend our thanks. Thank you for giving of your time, your talent, your treasure to bless this school, the families, the children, the faculty and staff. And for those of you who might be visiting tonight or haven't had the opportunity to participate in the various auxiliary committees, we'd encourage you to do so. You will meet and make new friends along the way, and you will receive the blessing in giving and serving. In closing, we would encourage you to carry on. Carry on the mission and vision of the auxiliary. Carry on the ministry of this incredibly supportive group of volunteers. God is at work in and through this school, and He accomplishes His purposes through hearts that are yielded to Him. The theme for this evening is 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace. And that is our prayer for you. Thank you so much.
Julie and Janet, thank you so much for your words this evening and for all the time and thought that went into preparing for your speeches. We're all blessed by hearing you speak about your time at the school, the legacy of the teachers that came before you, and the many ways that you and others have served the school. I'd like you both to stay on stage for a few more minutes. We invited your children to be part of this evening, but due to distance, this wasn't possible for most of them. We're glad that Katie was able to join us tonight, but we wanted to make sure that you heard from all 4 of your children, and we invite you to watch this short video that they made for you.
Hi, Mom. We wish we could be with you tonight, but we're thankful that you and Aunt Julie have been able to reminisce on your years at the grammar school and how the Lord has worked through that time, and that you're able to share that with others tonight. So we'll be excited to watch the video later on and hear some familiar stories and maybe some new ones too. Have a great evening.
Hi, Mom. I wanted to let you know what a joy it has been to watch you and Dad be a part of the WCGS community for so long. You spent 24 years as a classroom teacher, most of them in 4th grade. I enjoyed getting to watch you firsthand when I was in your 6th grade class. I've always admired your care and compassion for your students, especially those who needed extra help. You were creative and made learning fun and applicable to our lives. You always linked faith with learning and applied every subject to God's truth. Even though the profession of education requires long hours, even beyond the normal working hours, Watching you and Dad serve together, investing in school families' lives, and positively influencing and impacting your students made me want to be a teacher. How special it is that I have now been a fourth grade teacher for 12 years and that you have been able to help me come up with new ideas for my classroom and help me grade papers. I have watched you continue to invest in WCGS as you have supported Dad in his many years at the school and played piano in the school musicals and orchestra and choir concerts. You and Dad have gone beyond the classroom and have stayed connected with families who are no longer at WCGS, as well as those who are currently at WCGS. You have cared about students academically, but more importantly, spiritually. You have showed them God's love. Both you and Dad's investments in these families' lives will last a lifetime, and I'm thankful that I've had a front row seat to watch you be the hands and feet of Jesus. I love you.
Mom, what an honor it is to celebrate your many years of service at Wheaton Christian Grammar School. Thank you for following God's call to lifelong ministry with Dad. You have been by Dad's side, supporting him through different school roles, teaching 5th grade here, as well as being a substitute teacher. Back in the day, you even served as a cheerleading coach. And most recently, you've led a relationship unit for 8th grade girls. Your example has been an incredible demonstration of what it means to be faithful, committed, and devoted to Christian education. You are a tremendous encourager and prayer warrior. You have a heart for making others feel appreciated and valued. You take time to provide teachers and students with encouragement, whether at the end of a day when you've subbed or on student assignments. You are often the one who ran to Starbucks to get a birthday treat from Dad to encourage a faculty or staff member on his or her birthday. And you encouraged and continue to encourage from the bleachers as well. I've loved supporting and cheering on the Spartans with you over the years, and might I add, very loudly at times. Together with Dad, you've supported this school faithfully in prayer. You fully relied on Jesus to strengthen and uphold you, and turned to his word for wisdom. Thank you for seeking Jesus first and supporting the mission at WCGS. I love you.
Hi, Mom. I wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you for the many ways that you have loved and served the Wheaton Christian Grammar School family throughout all the years. I know you first started at Wheaton Christian Grammar School as a teacher, and then you had me, and you stepped away from maybe as formal of a role, but then you stepped into many other roles. I remember you being a cheerleading coach, actually my cheerleading coach, for a little while, which kind of makes me giggle, knowing myself, because I'm not the cheerleading type. But I did love spending time with you. And I think of the many games that you sat in the stands and supported and cheered on many a Wheaton Christian Grammar School boys basketball team. You are quite the fan, and you have quite a loud woohoo. I can't even say it, but you are quite the fan. Thank you for looking for ways to love people, for being in relationship with them and wanting to get to know them. You know, Mom, you did a lot of things, some things that were seen and a lot that were unseen. One thing that comes to mind to me is I know that you would oftentimes go and pick up, back in the day, it was Baker's Square Pie, then it became Starbucks, just different treats for teachers on their birthdays, and things like that. So anyway, I love you a lot. I'm so grateful for the many ways that you have loved and served at Wheaton Christian Grammar School, and I thank you for the example that you've been to Katie and to myself, and for the loving support you've been to Dad throughout the years. And I just love seeing that in you. I admire that in you. And I hope you're having a wonderful time tonight. I love you.
I know you probably want to sit down and relax, but I'd like you to stay on stage just a little longer as I invite some former auxiliary presidents to join us up here. Coming to the stage are Alison Montalto, Erin Dieter, Amy Shelton, Brittany Fellows, Jen Eldersveld, and Christy English. In keeping with our theme of legacy through service, we thought it would be fitting for them to make a small presentation to you as they have known you over many years. Practice this bit.
My great pleasure to represent all these wonderful women and women who aren't here tonight, and all of you out there who have served, people who aren't here that have served the grammar school. So Julie and Janet, one reason we've come here tonight is to present you both with a gift on behalf of the former and current auxiliary boards, their presidents, and all of the countless volunteers over the years that have served the faculty and staff of Wheaton Christian. This spring, there will be 2 trees planted on the school grounds in your honor, along with a marker that bears your name. We thank you both as you have each been, and continue to be, we're not letting you go, influential in growing Wheaton Christian Grammar School, both the community and the school, into what we all get to enjoy today. We thank you, and we look forward to spring and warmer weather where we can plant those trees. Thank you.
Hey, thank you to our former presidents for being here tonight. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our Auxiliary Vice President, Julie Nyquist, for all her hard work and dedication to the videos, to the planning of this evening, and to making it such a success. So, Julie's over here. And now we're still not letting Janet take her seat, as I'd like to invite her back to the piano. Thank you. Along with Emily Mittelstadt on violin and Nicole Cook leading us in our final hymn this evening. Please stand and sing with us.
side. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Let us end the night with thanksgiving and prayer. Thank you so much, ladies. Lord, thank you for a great night of celebration, for choosing us for such a time as this. Lord, thank you for Julie and Janet. Bless them abundantly for being such a great witness to all of us who come behind them. And this is my prayer, that our love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, so we may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ, to the glory and praise of God. Amen.
Let's not forget your flowers. Amen.